Good morning, I'm Rich Haley. It is Friday, February 14th. You know what that is? That's Valentine's Day. But far more importantly, it's also the Friday before the Daytona 500. So we're going to be bringing you all sorts of information about NASCAR and the Daytona 500. We'll also talk about the Lady Vols game last night and preview the Vols game coming up this weekend. So get ready for the green flag because all that starts right here on Sports in the Smokies right now. All right, good morning. Like I said, this is Rich Haley, and you're here with me on the Mountain Fun Life channel, and we're doing the Morning in the Mountains edition, Sports in the Smokies. So it's Friday morning. We've got a lot going on, and we're going to cover all of it. Before we do that, I just wanted to let you know that, as always, you can contact us on Facebook Live during the show. Ask questions. I'll be doing my best to get you the right answers, and if I can't find the right answer, I'll get you one that sounds good. You can watch us here on Facebook Live. You can also catch the show on our YouTube channel and on Roku. You can also catch our podcasts all over the place on Spotify and any of the other places where podcasts are hosted. So tune in anytime. Feel free to leave comments. We check back on those every now and again and make sure that we can get any information you need. And like I've said every day on this show, when I do this show, it's your show. Whatever you guys want to talk about, anything that you want us to cover, feel free to drop us a note, give us a call. My email is rhailey@mountainfunlife.com. You can send me an email, let me know of an event that you'd like for me to cover, and we'll get out there and do our best to make you guys proud. So today we're going to be talking, like I said, about NASCAR, but before we get there, we're going to start off with the Lady Vols. And the Lady Vols played at LSU last night and came up on the short end of a 75-65 decision. Not their best game. They had some troubles. They were doing great throughout most of the game on turnovers, but then started having issues there at the end of the game, and that really made the difference. They stayed tight with LSU for most of the game, but in the end, there was just too much pressure, and they weren't able to keep it going. Part of the problem was they had some cold shooters. Ray Burrell, who did such an excellent job earlier in the week, went 0 for 7 from the field, and that's just not characteristic of her. On the other hand, Renaya Davis hit 8 of 13 for 19 total points, leading the Lady Vols in scoring, but there just wasn't enough offense to keep the game in reach. Now, that is their third consecutive loss for the Lady Vols, and that starts to put them into kind of a hard place as far as the postseason goes. Now, they're not out of the tournament by any stretch. They're still ranked 25, although that may change on Monday, but they are starting to show signs of struggling here as the season progresses. And just to show you how tight things are in the SEC itself, they were battling with LSU for third place in the SEC. With the loss, they dropped all the way down to 7th place in the SEC. Still some basketball to be played. They've got 7 more games to go in the season, and then we'll see how they do in the SEC tournament. So the other player I wanted to mention, Jennifer Horston, 7 rebounds, but she also had 5 turnovers, and most of those were towards the end of the game. So the Lady Vols will be back in action later next week, and we'll talk about that Monday. All right, so that was the Lady Vols. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is NASCAR and the Daytona 500. Now, yesterday on Ask Frank Live, if you watched, you saw that Frank was very interested in learning more about NASCAR, and he said all of his commenters were doing the same thing. So I figured we're going to take a little bit of time today and talk about what is NASCAR, where did it come from, and why do we sit around on Sunday afternoon and watch cars go around in a circle to the left for 3.5 hours. All right, so NASCAR, first off, what does it stand for? I didn't know this till I looked it up. Well, I'm sure I knew it at one time. NASCAR is the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, so NASCAR. Seems a little redundant, stock car auto, but that's what it is. They had to get that extra A in there to get car in the title. So NASCAR's been around since 1948, so they've been doing this for quite a while, and Daytona was one of their first races. They actually raced out on the beach in Daytona, so that had to be kind of interesting. So there are several different series that make up NASCAR, and the first one that we're going to talk about isn't actually a NASCAR series until about 2 years ago when they got folded into NASCAR, and that's the ARCA Racing Series. ARCA, American Racing Car Association, has always been sort of like the little brother of NASCAR, and now they are part of the NASCAR family, and their series is sponsored by Maynard's, so that's the ARCA Maynard Series. The cool thing about Daytona Speed Week is you get races from all four of the mainline racing organizations. So the ARCA Series, the ARCA race, happens, I believe that it was yesterday. So that kind of kicks off the racing. And like I said, they're more or less the kid brother for NASCAR. The cars are a little bit smaller. They're not quite as powerful. They race primarily on shorter tracks, but it's a great place for drivers to get experience and to learn how to race before they move up into the bigger, stronger cars. The next series, and the race is also happening today, as a matter of fact, and that is the Truck Series sponsored by Gander Mountain. So the Truck Series, they started off, this is probably the most recent of the NASCAR series, and they started racing trucks 10, 15 years ago, and it really caught on with the fans. So it's a much smaller circuit. They don't hit nearly as many races as do the next two series we're going to talk about. But it's a lot of fun. It's some very intense competition. And again, it's a chance for drivers to get experience, but it's also a really different style of driving. The trucks handle way differently than the cars do. So if you have a little bit of a different skill set, the Truck Series is a great way for drivers to get in and get some experience making circles. So the next one that we talk about, we're moving up to the Xfinity Series, and this is the B team. These are the JV. These are the guys that are hungry and have proven themselves in some of the lower series and some of the local tracks. Now they're getting ready. They're wanting to get the Cup ride. So the Xfinity Series has been around for a long time, but it's been under a lot of different names. Older folks like me may remember that as the Busch Series, Busch Grand National. It's had a lot of name changes over the years, and then Comcast came in as the primary sponsor a few years ago, and it's been the Xfinity Series ever since. Now, one of the interesting things about the Xfinity Series is that it's primarily, like I said, it's the JV. It's the minor leagues. This is where the players go before they get up into the big league of the NASCAR Cup. But a lot of NASCAR drivers, a lot of the Cup drivers have liked to race in Xfinity. And for a long time, the cars were slightly different, but similar enough that if you raced in the Xfinity Series, it gave you some good practice to get ready for the Cup race. It also let you get familiar with the track, since a lot of times the Xfinity race is held right before the Cup race. So drivers would run in the Xfinity Series, and then the next Sunday they would be racing the same track on the Cup Series. So that was the original intent, but was for bringing up the other drivers. So what happened is, as the Cup drivers started racing in the Xfinity, they were almost pushing out the developmental drivers, and that became kind of a problem. And NASCAR took a step to take care of that. They changed the car configuration for the Xfinity Series so that the driving was significantly different, which meant you didn't get that same advantage of driving in the Xfinity Series helping you out on the Cup side. So we're not seeing quite as many of the Cup drivers down in the Xfinity Series. Now, on the good side of this crossover is you start getting a lot more fan interest in the Xfinity Series when you've got several Cup drivers running in it. Because if you're a fan of a Cup driver and he's running on Saturday as well as Sunday, then you start to watch a little bit more, and that helps everybody in the sport. So they don't want to totally get rid of it, but they do want to keep it a little bit manageable. So that leads us to the big boy, the Cup race. Now, Hunter, that was an awesome transition. I really liked that one. So Hunter is my engineer. He's the one that's responsible for making the graphics look really good. So the Cup series has gone by a lot of names. Used to be the Winston Cup, and then they decided that tobacco is evil and awful and nasty, so it shouldn't be used to advertise a car race. So they removed Winston from sponsorship, and it's gone through several sponsors since then. You may remember that it was Sprint or Nextel, and then for the last couple of years, it's been part of the Monster Energy Drink Cup series. And NASCAR decided this year to do something a little bit different. They're trying to create a brand out of NASCAR. So they don't have a primary sponsor this year. It's more of a committee. And there's 4 major sponsors, and they will get to roll out over the course of the season. But the name of the series is now the NASCAR Cup, which is kind of cool. I kind of like that change. So those are the 4 main series. And here on the weekend of Valentine's Day, February 14th, all 4 series are running in Daytona. So the ARCA race, like I said, was yesterday. The truck race will be today. Then on Saturday, we will have the Xfinity Series drivers running. And then on Sunday is the big race for the NASCAR Cup. So that's just a little bit of background on NASCAR and a little bit about the different races. So the next thing that we are going to talk about, first I'm going to take a comment. Craig Bummerstedt is here, and always nice to have him on the show. And Craig says that the XFL is really more interesting than the NFL. Feels more like college mixed with the NFL. Couldn't agree with you more, Craig. One of the cool things about the XFL is that even in their last incarnation, and they've carried it forward successfully to this one, is the NFL takes itself way seriously. Everything is serious, it's heavy, and some of the fun of the game has been lost. I mean, not all of it, obviously. It's still a great game, but there's a feel of it's professional and it's work, and we really have to take some things too seriously. And the XFL is working on putting the fun back in the game. And that's a cool thing. I really enjoy that. And the XFL is willing to experiment with more rule changes. And they're doing some interesting things on that. They've really retooled the kickoff. And I heard somebody else talking about that the other day, and they said there's only 6 or 7 kickoffs during the game. Is that really going to be enough to get people to pay attention to the XFL? And if that's all it was, probably not. But what they're showing is they've got that willingness to experiment and to try to bring new things to the game. And I think that's really good. The other thing that the XFL is doing is their rule chains have a purpose. They want to shorten the games. Instead of 3.5 hours for a game, they want to keep them under 3 hours, closer to 2.5 hours. So that's what the rule changes are for, is to keep the game moving a little bit faster. And I like that. It makes it more entertaining, and it's not so much of a loss of an entire afternoon to watch a single football game. So we'll see how they go. I'm really interested in seeing how it goes. Again, they've got a small number of teams. They're all in existing NFL markets. They play straight through the season, and they have a 4-team playoff at the end to determine the championship. So everything is built to have a nice, quick, interesting season. So we'll see how that goes for them. Thanks for the comment, Craig. I love talking about the XFL, especially since they got rid of all the wrestling overtones, the storylines, and all that garbage. Let's just play football. I like football. All right, so back into NASCAR, back into Speed Week. One of the really interesting things about the Daytona 500 that makes it different from any other race is the qualifying process. It's far more complicated. It's got a lot going on. So what we're going to do is take a quick break here, and when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about that. Now, before I send you away on the break, I've got a trivia question for you because I love trivia. So, NASCAR has a race on Memorial Day weekend called the Coca-Cola 600. It's raced in Charlotte, North Carolina, 600 miles in the evening. Also on Memorial Day is an IndyCar race, the granddaddy of all races, the Indy 500. Now, it's raced in the early afternoon. So several drivers over time have run both races. They go to Indy, they run the Indy 500, jump in a helicopter, go to the airport, take the airport airplane to Charlotte and then a helicopter out to the track, jump into the stock car, and then run another 600 miles. Because I know I like to drive 1,100 miles in a single day. So here's my trivia question for you. Several drivers have done this. Who is the first driver to complete all 1,100 miles of both races? Okay? First driver to complete all 1,100 miles of both races. Hang on through the break, and when we come back, I'll give you the answer.
Want more mountain fun life? We are now streaming through Roku. Roku is a device that enables you to stream entertainment to your TV through your internet provider. The starting price is only $29, and you can purchase one either online or through your local electronics retailer. It's easy to use, and you won't have to worry about missing any more Mountain Fun Life episodes. Mountain Fun Life, guiding your adventure.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that. I know I enjoyed the chance to get a little drink and wet my whistle. So we have a trivia question on the table, and I'll give you that answer in a second. But before we left, I started talking about the qualification process for the Daytona 500, which is pretty cool. So let's talk about that. So what happens is we've got a multi-step qualification process. Almost all the other races, they qualify basically using a time trial. Each driver gets in their car, they take a warm-up lap around the track, and then they have a timed lap. Fastest lap gets the pole position. Having the pole position is a huge advantage in the race. There's nobody in front of you. You get the chance to race in clean air, and if you can keep that going, you've got a really good chance of keeping your car in one piece. So you really try hard to get that pole position. So while most races use that qualifying, and that's all they do, Daytona's changed it up a little bit. They still do the qualifying run, and the fastest time during the qualifier gets the pole position, and the second fastest time sits outside of them. So you've got two cars lined up side by side. So that gets the first two cars in the field locked into place. The rest of the time trials are used to help situate the cars for two dual races. The races are 60 laps, which means they come out to 150 miles because Daytona is a 2.5 mile track. And they take half the cars and they race in the first duel, half the cars in the second duel. And in that duel, the first 15 cars make the race. So you've got two dual races going, and those happened last night. And let's see. Yeah, I switched to the wrong page. That's all right. So the two drivers who, the 15 drivers that come in first on each of the duels make up the next 30 cars in the, there we go, in the race group. So I've got my two leaders from the time trials, then I've got another 30 cars from the duels. So that gives me a total of 32. So I've got a few spots left for more drivers. So the next thing we take is the four fastest non-qualifiers. So the four fastest drivers from the duels that did not qualify or from the time trials get into the race. And what this does is it takes care of people who, for example, they have a great time trial, but during a duel they get into a wreck, okay? They don't want to have you excluded from the race because of that. You've got a fast car, you just had bad luck on the track. So we've got 4 spots set aside for folks like that. Good time trial, bad performance in the duel. They can slide in with 4 slots that way. There are 7 slots left. If there is a past champion, and that's a cup champion, who has not qualified during the first 2 ways, there is an exemption for them to get in the field that way. If no one does that, then there are 7 drivers left, and they take the 7 highest points teams from the previous season, get into the Daytona 500 that way. Okay? So you wind up with a total of 43 cars 2 of them from time trials, 30 of them from the duels, and the rest either through are called provisionals. So, and that's how that works. So it's complicated, but it gives us a whole 2 weeks of racing before the big race, which happens on Sunday. All right, so the duels were last night, and we do have a local driver, Chad Fincham, who is racing. He's got a full-time cup ride in the 49 car. Unfortunately, he finished very slowly. He had some car troubles, I believe. So he is not going to be in the Daytona 500 this year. But it's a brand new team, and that's not entirely unexpected for a brand new team. All right, so before we leave NASCAR and move on to high school basketball, let's answer our trivia question. Okay. Oh, we got some people. All right. Hunter, Kira says she did send a video, so it may have just now come through. So check it out. All right, so to answer the trivia question, and again, I'll remind you of what it was. Several drivers have competed in both the Indy 500 and the Coca-Cola 600 in the same day. Which driver did it first and completed all 1,100 miles? And nobody has put an answer up, so I'm going to give you the answer. And the answer is Tony Stewart, also known as Smoke. I've never been a huge Tony Stewart fan, but if you can drive 1,100 miles in a day plus flying however many extra miles that is, that's a pretty impressive achievement. Now, what's really impressive, he did this in 2001, and he finished 6th in the Indy 500, which is a major accomplishment. And then after flying to Charlotte, he finished 3rd in the Coca-Cola 600. So that's pretty impressive. Like I said, not a huge Tony Stewart fan, but you finish like that in 2 races in one day, you're a driver. That's all there is to that. All right, so we've got a nice little surprise for you. Kira Cup has been in Daytona for Speed Weeks. She's been working with the Fincham family, but she has taken some time out of her busy day going to Disney World and everywhere else to send us an update. So let's go ahead and roll that update right now.
Good morning, Rich and Mountain Fun Life. I am at the Daytona International Speedway for the Daytona 500 and the Xfinity race. Chad Fincham is from Knoxville, Tennessee. I came down here to make videos for him and take photos. Last night he had an opportunity to try to get into the Daytona 500. He actually didn't quite make the cut, but he came so close. He was just 2 spots away from making it into the race. And here's actually a photo of him with his family right before he went and competed in the duels. And he did a really great job. But he's actually going to be racing in the Xfinity Series now. He's going to be doing the practice rounds today, and then I think he's going to be qualifying tomorrow before the race. So you can always download the NASCAR app and watch it from there, or you can watch it from local sports, not local sports, but on TV. Well, I hope that you all are having a fabulous day, and I hope that you have a great show, Rich. I will see you all next week. I'll be back next Thursday with Frank, and we will be doing probably another giveaway. Bye, guys.
All right, thanks, Kira. I appreciate you taking time out of your morning to send that out to us. And that's good news that Chad is running in the Xfinity Series, so he will still get to race in Daytona. Hate that he didn't make the big race, but, you know, as a brand new team, that's going to happen. That's not too big of a surprise. So it's good to know that he will be out there on the Xfinity track. And Kira is right. Qualifying for the Xfinity race is tomorrow, and the race will be tomorrow afternoon. So, and actually, I believe I've got the time right here. The Xfinity race is at 2:30 on Saturday. So good luck to Chad Fincham. Drive fast. Turn left. All right, so that is our NASCAR portion, and I've got some comments up in here. So let's look at some of these real quick. Doug said he's a little late, have to catch the first part later. That's great, because that's why we leave it up, so you can catch up and see what we were talking about. And Doug was complaining that he couldn't hear anything, but then he turned on his speakers and things went much better. Okay. Craig, after the trivia question, said that must have been back in his prime, and it was. Tony Stewart was an excellent racer in his, like you said, in his prime. And that's just an amazing thing. I don't know that anybody's ever going to equal that. a sixth in the Indy 500, and then a third in stock car. And two different cars are completely different, and the driving techniques are different. So it really speaks to his versatility as a driver to be able to do that. Now, one of the things that's going to make it hard for that to happen again is they keep changing the start time of the Indy 500. So they call it the Double Duty Challenge, and it's out there now, a huge purse to any driver who can win both races. And right now, the start times are a little bit too close together, but if there's enough interest, I guarantee Indy 500 will jump a little bit early, and they'll open that window up again. So we'll see what happens in the future. All right. And Doug says that day was a great day to watch motorsports, and he is exactly right. That was a fun day. And there wasn't a lot of negativity associated with it. Everybody was really interested to see how well these drivers who were doing double duty could do. Tony Stewart's not the only one. John Andretti did it, and a couple of others. I think Kurt Busch was the last one to try it in 2014. So we'll see if it happens again. It's always a fun time. All right, so we're going to switch up now from NASCAR and move into high school basketball. So we have a lot of basketball going on right now. We are getting close to the postseason. Matter of fact, this is the last week of the regular season. There are some makeup games next week as we get ready to move into the postseason tournaments based on the, as Frank called it, the flooding and the flu that we had going around here. So Thursday night, which was last night, we had some basketball games. Seymour took on Carter, and we know Carter's an extremely strong team, and Seymour just really didn't have anything for him. Carter won the boys 75-48, and the girls won 62-40. Then Gatlinburg-Pittman took on Gibbs, and this was at Gatlinburg-Pittman. The boys won 80-64 for the Highlanders, and this is not a mistake. I looked it up in 3 places because I've never seen a basketball score like this. The Lady Highlanders won their game 72-9. So the Gibbs girls basketball team has a steep learning curve ahead of them, apparently. So congratulations to the Highlanders and the Lady Highlanders. Northview Academy went to Jeff County. The boys lost 70-53. But the girls won 48-34. Again, the Northview girls are extremely powerful. They had that loss to Carter, but they're doing really well, so on. Then the other team that was in action last night was the Kings Academy. Now they're private. They're part of Division II, Single A, and they're already in their tournament. The boys won their first game, but then they lost in the semifinal to Webb 69-28. Then the girls were to play Grace Christian last night, and I did not see any results posted this morning, so I'm not sure whether the game was postponed again or if it just hadn't been reported. So more basketball tonight as we finish up the regular season. Sevier County is taking on Heritage. That'll be here in Sevier County, and it's senior night, so get out there and support the Smoky Bears. Seymour is taking on Pigeon Forge. And there's going to be some battles in that game. It's always a tough matchup when you're playing in county. And then Gatlinburg-Pittman is taking on McMinn Central. So those games will be here local, all of them. So if you want to go see some local basketball, you're good to go. All right, then for this weekend, what do we have coming up this weekend? Obviously, we've got UT men's basketball. Since the ladies just played, the men are just right around the corner. They have a really tough matchup. They have to go to South Carolina. The game will be at 6 o'clock, and it'll be on the SEC Network. Now, here's the thing on this game. The Vols are right now not really part of the postseason conversation. A win on Saturday puts them back in the conversation. It doesn't get them into the bubble yet, but they're in the foam. We'll call it that. They're in the foam. So that's going to be a tough game for the Vols. What makes things tougher is the rest of their schedule going through the regular season is extremely tough. They've got 2 games against Auburn. They've got another matchup with Kentucky. And we really need, of these last 7 games, for them to win 4 out of the 7, and that's going to be really, really tough. And this game is vital for that effort. So, excuse me, I hope they do get a good game. Then Sunday, the Lady Vols will be at Thompson Bowling Arena, and they'll be taking on Texas A&M and looking to stop this skid. So we're going to hope that they do well there. Get out and support them. That will be at 3 p.m. If you can't get out and watch the game live, they'll be on ESPN2. Let's see. We've got some more comments. Craig, yes, you're exactly right. Craig says the reason Dish and DirecTV are not good sponsors for NASCAR is because every time it rains, it all stops, both the race and the broadcast. You can't be more right about that. NASCAR doesn't race in the rain because they use slick tires for better grip on the dry pavement. When the pavement gets wet, they're moving around like they're on banana peels out there. So they stop the race for the rain. They use the great big jet dryers to dry out the track. And I guess we got to run out and clean off 13 million Dish antennas at the same time to get the signal back up. So good point, Craig. I like that. All right. That is about all of my time for today. This has been Sports in the Smokies here on the Mountain Fun Live channel. Remind you, we're going to be here every Friday. Then Monday and Tuesday, it's the standard Morning in the Mountains magazine show with Frank and Kira. Then on Wednesday, we've got our new show, and I hope you watched it Wednesday. If you didn't, check it out on Roku or Facebook or our YouTube channel, because it was really interesting. That's the entertainment show with Jim Johnson and Dre, and they did a great job highlighting some of the local performers and talking about some of the local upcoming shows. And they're going to be bringing us a new show every Wednesday. And then, of course, Thursday is Ask Frank with Kira, and you never know what's going to happen there. We may be eating weird foods. We may be talking about some of our favorite shows. All depends on what's going on. And then, of course, next Friday, I'll be sitting right here. So thank you for tuning in. We will see you next week. I'm Rich Haley. This is the Mountain Fun Life channel, and you've been watching Sports in the Smokies. We'll see you next week.